Releasing the Grip of Your Past, episode 284. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and boy, is it good to be back behind this microphone for a solo episode. I don't know if you folks have missed me, but we've been doing a series of reruns, replays. We also had our end-of-year planning event, and I've been itching to get back in the saddle and back behind the microphone. I don't know when the last solo episode was that I did. I think I did one towards the end of the year, my reflections on the year, but then I really hadn't done anything since we were in the hospital for my wife's pregnancy and my son's delivery. So many of you already know that story. I'm not going to go back and recap it, but happily everybody's home. We are definitely dealing with some challenges with Derek learning how to breastfeed, which is really sapping at my energy because my wife is pumping and I am bottle feeding him, or we are bottle feeding him, but often during the night I'm up multiple times bottle feeding, and then he also has reflux, so often he's sleeping on me or in my arms, and I'm sleeping on the couch while I'm holding him. So probably not the safest of ideas, but he just won't sleep laying down. So that's challenges that we have with the joys of parenting. But I am here recording this for you because I wanted to get back into the groove. I needed to put this episode out for my own edification. But when it came time to think about, okay, what am I going to talk about? Like, what is the right topic to come back to? I had no idea. And as is often the case, the content for today was inspired by a coaching conversation that I had with one of my coaching clients. So for those of you who don't know, I run an elite lawyers group coaching program. It's currently an 18-month program. It's going to be changing to a 12-month program, so at the same price. So if you are interested in learning more about the coaching program and how it might be something that can help you with scaling and growing your firm, then you definitely want to take advantage of a free coaching session that we offer. That is the application process for this program. Spots are limited for those free coaching calls, and we're actually doing away with that whole model of bringing people in that way into the program. So if you want to take advantage of 6 extra months for the same price and the free coaching call, both of which are going to be going away shortly, then don't hesitate and book your call today. Go to profitwithlaw.com/free coaching, profitwithlaw.com/free coaching. Okay, so this is actually nothing that's a secret. As a matter of fact, on my pitiful website of dreambuilderfinancial.com, which is the website that was originally for my accounting firm, there's an about page, and I share part of the story on that about page. I think on my LinkedIn profile, I also share part of the story. But in this coaching conversation, it came up that we sometimes are limited in what we can accomplish because of our experiences from our parents. And I am going to talk about my father in this episode, and I want you to know that I love him dearly, and I am not judging him in this conversation. But there are things that I experienced in my childhood watching and observing my father and being deeply involved in the process that really impacted my future in various ways. One of which is how I'm able to be here behind the microphone, helping you and be working with law firm owners and helping them. And I want to share this story with you because you may be carrying your own baggage. You may be carrying your own stuff from your childhood, from your experiences with your parent, your dad, your mom, or something else from your childhood that's really holding you back from success. And I think it's important to start to recognize that that's there and to address it, to either address it head on and overcome it, or to address it in a way that you start to create ways to circumvent that block, to circumvent that thing from getting in your way. So my experience with my father always was trying to create a life for us. He was trying to put money on the table to provide for us. And he never felt like he was able to work for somebody else. He wanted to do things his own way. He didn't want to be told what to do. So he set out on a path of what some would call entrepreneurship. It depends on how you define entrepreneurship, but maybe it was a path of business ownership, where he started a business and built it to a point where it was starting to achieve some success, and then would shut it down and start a different business. And this went on throughout my childhood, and it even was I was deeply involved in all these businesses because my father had no qualms with child labor, unpaid child labor. So we, me and my brothers, we were all involved in all these businesses. However, he never was able to hire somebody from outside to work in the business. And this journey, and I don't recall the exact order of the businesses. So my father first started as a jewelry salesman. And that really, he kind of worked for somebody else, but I guess a salesman is a business owner, right? A salesman works on commission. So essentially you're your own boss, you're paving your own way. And if you make sales, great. And if you don't, then you're not going to feed your family. So it's really the same concept. So he started as a jewelry salesman, and he had a couple of close calls with thieves, and people, sneaking up on him and to steal the jewelry. I don't know if that's why he got out of the jewelry business. I'm not sure, but he then started this, series of businesses. One of the first businesses that I remember him starting is a local flower delivery service. So I grew up in a Orthodox Jewish home, so we observed the Sabbath. And one of the things that people like to do for the Sabbath was to buy flowers, fresh cut flowers, to have in a vase on the Sabbath table. And he said, well, what if instead of them needing to remember to go to the store to buy flowers, or to, have to go to the inconvenience of going to the flower shop to pick it up, what if I can offer a service? And it was genius. It was a subscription model where you signed up to pay every week $18 or $36 or $54 for an arrangement of flowers. And he would go to the flower district in Manhattan on Thursday morning, and he would pick up a whole bunch of flowers and then come back, and we would sit there on Thursday during the day, Thursday night. Actually, Thursday during the day we didn't do it because my mother was the one arranging these flowers into bouquets. So she had a job. She's been a bookkeeper or the CFO for her company. She's been working there since I was not in diapers, but since I was a toddler. As long as I can remember, she was working there. So she had a job during the day, and then at night she had to be making these arrangements to then get delivered on Friday. and we would do the delivery. So he bought this big wooden wheelbarrow, and we would literally walk around town and walk around our neighborhood and deliver these flowers to people's houses. I have no idea about the revenue side of it. I wasn't involved in the business itself, but I can't imagine. I mean, I don't know how much he was making, after the cost of material. But we were doing the delivery. My mother was doing the making of the flower arrangements. He was getting all that labor for free, even with that, he probably was barely profitable. It got to the point where he expanded outside of the neighborhood, and then he had to hire a young man to do the deliveries on Friday afternoons, which then gave him an excuse to have to buy a van to do the deliveries in. So it was very interesting because all of the businesses that he started, they always were a gateway to buying a bunch of stuff that we probably didn't need. The wooden wheelbarrow stayed in the house and stayed in the family for many, many years, way after the flower business was over. It had plenty of uses. And I don't know, my memory could be wrong. It could be he bought that even before the flower business and we just happened to have it. But it always seemed like there was toys that were being purchased for these different things. So that was one business that we had. Then, and I have no idea why he decided to shut it down. I think that ultimately when he was operating these businesses, at the end of the day, he finally realized, hey, I'm not really making any money. We're going through all this effort, and what do I have to show for it at the end? When I start to look at, maybe I need to hire somebody, I have to hire a delivery guy, I start paying the delivery guy, or maybe my mother said, hey, look, you got to hire somebody to put the bouquets together. I can't do this for you anymore. I don't know. I have to go back and ask him. But ultimately, he shut it down. Then he went into a gold refinery business in our basement. He purchased a furnace, a blowtorch, and he would go around and he would get scrap gold or scrap metal that might contain gold from various places, and he would bring it home and run the furnace and melt it down, and ultimately he would get a little gold bar or a little gold nugget and then go and sell it to a jeweler or a wholesaler, and I presumably make some money that way. One of the interesting things that I found out in this process is that eyeglasses, at least they used to be manufactured with a very small amount of gold in them. So he would literally come home with these massive garbage bags filled with old eyeglass frames that he got from wherever he was getting it from. And we dump all those frames into the furnace and melt it all down to get a little tiny bit of gold from it. It was just... So my involvement in that business was far less than in a lot of others because he was very cautious about us being involved in the blowtorch and the furnace part of it. But that was another business that he had, and I don't remember how long it lasted but I have a feeling that was a supply problem. There's only so much scrap metal you can get and refine down before you run out of sources to get it from. And the sources probably didn't have the scraps gathering quickly enough for him to make money from it. As I'm sharing these stories with you, I should really go back and talk to my father to figure out what happened with each of these businesses, why he shut them down. The next business that I remember is, and I don't even know the right terminology for it, but he would buy stuff on closeout. So if there, for example, there was this fax machine that stopped being sold for whatever reason, so he bought 100 of these fax machines, and then he went around to stores to sell it to them. So he got it at a significant discount, sold it to the stores at a discount. They sold it at retail or close to retail, and everybody makes money. One of the things that I vividly remember is he would always, when he brought the products home, and this was really genius of him, when we brought the products home, he would always say, "Why didn't this sell?" Like, why do I have this right now? What could we do differently to try to get this to sell? So one of the things that he brought home was he brought home cases and cases of a board game called Plutocrat. This board game was not selling, clearly, because they had to get rid of it. So he bought this massive amount of this game. And he said, we're going to figure out why this is not selling. So one day we opened it up, sat around the table and said, okay, let's read the instructions. We're going to play this game. Lo and behold, there were no instructions. So here was a game packaged with game pieces and a board, but there was literally no instructions telling you how to play. Well, of course, this game's not selling because anybody who bought it is returning it because they don't know how to play the game. So we sat there and we made up our own rules to the game of Plutocrat. My father then typed up an instruction manual and had it printed. And then he said, okay, when we opened the box, the pieces were just all over the place, helter-skelter. He said, what if we presented it in a very beautiful manner? So we went and repackaged all the pieces. We shrink wrapped stuff. We put stuff into little Ziploc bags, and we basically repackaged every one of these boxes. So you can imagine me and my two brothers. I'm one of five, but it's my older brother, myself, and the brother right below me are like one age group, and then we have like a gap, and then my sister and my youngest brother. So they weren't really involved in this process, if I remember correctly. So it was me and my two brothers. We literally every night would go through and repackage some of these games, and ultimately, when we were done and he re-shrink wrapped the boxes, he then was able to go to a store that sold, discount merchandise and, like an Amazing Savings kind of place or Odd Jobs, and turn around and sold all those games. I'm sure that he made some money on it. I'm sure he got it for almost nothing and then was able to sell it for some real money. But that was it. Like, it came in and then it was gone. And then we have to do that all over again, figure out the next thing. So I share these stories with you, not just to entertain you. I mean, it's definitely entertainment value to hear about this and to, think about me as a kid and always busy in my basement and, on these various schemes. But one of the things that he did is, and this was different than the other businesses because here he got together with somebody else who had a business and represented them. So there was a software company that made some Jewish education software. And this was back in the days when, PCs were just starting to get hard drives. And, like the personal computer being present in the home was just starting to become a thing. And I was 14, 15, 16 at the time, somewhere around that age. And this software company was created in Israel, and the owners were in Israel. Both of the owners were Americans living in Israel, and one of them owned a couple of jewelry stores locally, and my father knew him from the jewelry trade. So he knew that my father was, always looking for business opportunities, and he approached him and said, "Hey, look, we have this software company. We created this software, and we need to sell it in the U.S. Would you be willing to start our North American division of this software company?" And he said yes, and this started out of our basement. And we literally were creating the boxes and putting the discs inside and the instructions and shrink wrapping the boxes and shipping out the orders. Now, this was the one business that he ran that he had staff for. And I remember the people working for him. I remember what they did. And there was people who came in at night, and they were the tech support for the software. And people would call with their issues, and they would be on the phone and walk them through solving the problem. And I was very intrigued. I was very intrigued by computers in general, and I really got to know this software. And I was just a teenager, and I would hang out there in the evenings, and I started to take these phone calls, and I started to help people walk through their problems with their software. And most people, it was just a matter of instruction and education. It wasn't really like they had issues with it. It was just they didn't know how to do things. I mean, sometimes it was literally they bought a computer just to be able to use the software with it. So they were using a keyboard for the first time and a mouse for the first time. So it was very interesting, really intrigued me. And ultimately, my experience there is what got me launched on a 20-plus year in a career in IT. So I have that particular business to thank for it. But when it all is said and done, and I look at my father's journey and how it impacted me, I can say that there are certain things that I noticed that my father did that, how you look at the flaws of your parents and you say, I don't want to be like them, so I'm going to solve these things. And when I looked at my father's journey, I realized that he never really hired people. He never, and I never really talked to him about it. It's really the conclusions that I drew from watching him. The conclusions that I drew were that he never had a vision big enough. He never imagined the business beyond himself. He never planned for how it would get there. He never invested in marketing. He never invested in the business really, other than getting toys, right? He always was buying tools and buying, the things that he needed to get the job done. But beyond that, he never really invested in the businesses, in people, in process, in automation, in any sort of scalability or predictability in the business. He also never really planned for it. So and I think the planning is really second stage. Like, I don't think he planned because I don't think he had a vision to plan for. So he never really had to work out any numbers because there was no numbers to work out, because he just kind of like said, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to see where it takes me. And it's amazing when I look back, because I don't know the business side of it. I don't know whether he was successful financially with those businesses, whether it produced anything. I mean, I know what my mother always mumbled about, my mother, she would always say how, my father operates businesses to keep himself busy all day for the entertainment value. And she never really saw what he saw with them, but she worked, she brought home a paycheck, and she was just, happy that he was busy. So, now he's actually doing really well now. So he's settled down and he's been doing the same thing for over 20 years. And that's right now he's doing Access database programming. But even in Access database programming, he hasn't been able to grow it beyond himself. Like, he's like a gig worker. He looks for a contract opportunity. He works in a particular company for 6 months, 12 months, a year, 2 years, and then he's done with the contract, and then moves on to the next one. It's almost like always having a job, but always needing to look for the next job. Like, you never have the longevity of staying in one job, all for the sake of, I guess, not settling down and working for somebody. So I don't really understand why that's the path he took, but I do know that I observed that path. I do know that that's the path I was brought up in, and that was the world I was brought up in. And initially, whenever I looked at going out and starting my own business, and I worked in a career for a while, so I worked for somebody else, and I kind of got caught in this trap because I started life really young. So I started when I was 19. I had my first daughter, and from that moment, or even before that, from the moment that I got married at 19, to then having my daughter at 19, and from those moments on, there was always responsibility that I had that precluded me, or at least in my mind, precluded me from being able to go out and start a business, because it takes time to get the business off the ground, to make money, and I had responsibility. So I kind of was stuck in the cycle of needing a paycheck, needing to get paid by somebody. And that cycle lasted for 20 plus years until I finally started this business on my own. But I ran businesses for other people. So, I have a ton of experience, but I never took that leap. And when I look back and I say, like, what really prevented me from that leap, I liked to say that it had to do with my, my responsibilities. But the reality is that when I look at it and when I really think about it, it has a lot to do with watching my father and not wanting to be like him, not wanting to start a business without a vision, not wanting to start a business without a plan, not wanting to go down a road that I'm gonna change what I'm doing every few years. This business doesn't work. I'm gonna close it up, start the next one. And what's interesting is I don't remember the closing of the businesses, right? I don't remember when we stopped doing something. I only remember all of a sudden we were doing something different. We were doing something new. And I almost feel like it's possible that these businesses overlapped with each other, that we started the new thing before we even closed down the old thing. And it's that experience that really had me believing that I couldn't be successful unless I was able to do that same thing. And it wasn't until I was able to overcome that, it wasn't until I was able to shed that experience as being my future, that I was then able to finally step into the role of business owner and grow my own business. And I mean, with the help of coaches, of course, I realized early on that if I wanted to be different than my father, I needed to hire people to work for me. I needed to hire people on my team. And that's something I have my father to be thankful for, because that's something that was really valuable. He didn't teach me to do that. By not doing it, he taught me to do that, right? So, I hired my first staff member was a virtual assistant in the Philippines, and she still works for us today. She's an integral part of our team. And that hire came about when I really couldn't afford her. And now it's not a problem at all. But it was that leap of faith that I took to bring her on, knowing that I needed to do things differently than what I was exposed to. So I shared my whole story with you, almost 30 minutes of the story where I ramble on and on about my history. I hope it was enjoyable to hear this story. I share this with you because this is my story. This is my experience. And there are a ton of things that still today I have to struggle with or overcome or deal with that are based off of that. I mean, forget the entrepreneurship experience, but even like how to handle money and issues with money, and being told money doesn't grow on trees, and needing to close the lights in the rooms and getting in trouble if we left lights on because it's going to raise the electric bill by, we probably were talking about pennies that it changed the electric bill. But it's these kinds of, lessons of frugality and stinginess and overcompensating for things that really, had to be overcome to achieve certain levels of success in life. And I think it's important for you to start to do some self-reflection, to start to look at your own journey, and to start to recognize, where are your limits? Where are the things that you're running into that are a challenge for you, that you can turn around and say, okay, I recognize that this is a challenge for me. I recognize that this is an issue that I have. What's causing it? What is the root problem? What is causing me to feel this way, to think this way? And 9 times out of 10, it's going to have something to do with our childhood. Not necessarily with our mom or our dad, but it's going to have something to do with our childhood. And I think that if we really get in tune with those childhood experiences and we really start to uncover and figure out why we feel a certain way, why we're behaving a certain way, that can really unlock a level of success that we wouldn't otherwise be able to reach. So I'm not a psychologist. I'm not going to give you tools on this podcast to go through and explore that. But I do think it's something for you to think about. There's a lot that you bring to the table with your own personal experience that's very beneficial. But there's also a lot that you bring to the table that can hold you back, that can keep you stuck, that can make you afraid, that can prevent you from stepping into the role or the vision that you truly have for yourself. And I would love for you to be able to unlock that. So I would love for you to take time to really think about it, to reflect on it. Some of the things that you can do to arrive at it is to envision where you want to go. What's my 5-year picture of my firm? What's my 1-year picture of my firm? And then if I put myself in that place and I imagine myself being there at that level of success that I just imagined, and I look back at my journey and I say, what did I have to overcome to get here? When you start looking at your journey that way, then you can start to see that, oh, wow, I had to do this. I had to do that. I had to get out of my own way. I had to deal with these skeletons in my closet. And when that starts to show up for you, when that starts to become visible to you as an integral part of the journey, it's going to be that flag that's waving at you. It's going to be like, hey, this is something you need to deal with. And then you got to deal with it. And if that means hiring a professional to deal with it, then do that. If it means just, starting to become more in tune to when you're hitting something like that and to overcome it, then do that. But ultimately, if you want to achieve true success, if you really want to step into the highest role of yourself possible, you're going to have to identify these things. You're going to have to overcome them. And you're going to have to figure out the strategies to keep yourself out of your own way. Hopefully this is helpful to you. Thank you so much for listening. If you're not a subscriber to the podcast yet, we'd love it if you hit the subscribe button. And folks, it's so good to be back. Hopefully I'm back for good now, and you will start seeing solo episodes from me every Tuesday. My team's going to be releasing this one a day late, but we'll be back on track after this. So I'm back. I hope that you enjoyed my little storytelling of my childhood, and you got from it something that can help you move forward with your journey. We'll talk to you soon. We've got something in store for you on Thursday. Can't wait to share that. Take care. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.